Ang taon ay 1899. Noon, isang grupo ng mga Pilipino ang na-recruit para gumanap sa Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show sa Amerika. Pero ang kahanga-hanga nilang karera bilang performers sa ibang bansa, parang nalimutan na sa kasaysayan.
There's actually an inscription on the back. It says, "Remember to the Buffalo Bill's Wild West Troupe." It really struck us as they're asking for a remembrance, right? Who is to remember? Are they asking us as future audience to remember this group that has been forgotten?
Ito ang kwento ng mga unang Pilipino na naging artista sa Amerika.
The story goes back, almost 3 years now at this point.
And so we were interested in exploring this question about Filipinos in the American West. We eventually took a trip to the Buffalo Bill Museum and Grave in Golden, and that's when this story began to really take off. We located one photo from 1900, and it was of the full Filipino troupe taken from Madison Square Garden. At the center of the photo is Isadora, who is flanked by these other Filipino performers.
There's actually an inscription on the back. It says, "Remember to the Buffalo Bill's Wild West Troupe." It really struck us as they're asking for a remembrance, right? Who is to remember? Are they asking us as future audience to remember this group that has been forgotten?
The Rough Riders were actually, ito yung isang grupo ng mga American soldiers na halos lahat ay volunteers. They were called the Rough Riders because their definition of rough living doon sa field as soldiers. No? Most of them were actually cavalry.
Naging popular sa Amerika ang galing ng Rough Riders at ang kanilang talento. Naging inspirasyon sa nausong entertainment noong panahong iyon, ang Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show. Gamit ang reenactments at iba pang events tulad ng relay race, na ipapakita ang husay ng mga gumaganap na Rough Rider sa pangangabayo.
So the show covered 11,111 miles. Over about 200 days, there were over 300 performances in over 130 cities.
The show itself starts bringing in a number of different troupes that were often referred to as Rough Riders.
The Wild West Show was a form of popular entertainment, but it was also this effort to blend fiction and reality. And so there would be reenactments that had conflicts between cowboys and Indians.
Katulad ng sinaunang kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, may indigenous people rin sa Amerika bago ito napailalim sa colonial power ng British Empire. Naging marahas ang pakikitungo ng mga dayuhan sa Native Americans.
In the later part of the 19th century, there's essentially the westward expansion, from the East Coast out towards the West and sort of the occupying of indigenous lands in the United States.
Dito na nagsimula ang maritime expansion ng Estados Unidos, pati na paglawak ng US presence sa mga lugar sa Pasipiko. Dito na rin nabuo ang konsepto ng Wild West. Noong April 21, 1898, nagsimula ang gyera sa pagitan ng Espanya at Estados Unidos. Natalo ang Espanya at napunta sa Amerika ang ilang teritoryo nito. Kabilang dito ang Pilipinas, Cuba, Puerto Rico at Guam. Mula sa pagiging colony ng Spain, napasakamay ng Amerika ang Pilipinas before the turn of the century. Sa ilalim ng bagong colonial power na ito, nagkaroon ng recruitment ng mga Pilipino para sa Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show.
That was the first time I heard when I saw the article of the two researchers. So these are Filipino Americans in the United States. At nagulat ako na meron ngang kasama because yung ni Wild Bill Hickok, popular yan eh.
Si James Butler Hickok, nakilala rin bilang Wild Bill Hickok, ay isang legendary figure ng American Old West.
So there were three performers in 1899, and so their names are Isadora Alcantara, Felix Alcantara, and Geronimo. In the route book, it's Geronimo Momo. Later we learned that he's Geronimo Inocencio, but he has multiple names.
In being Filipino, they would participate in these arena shows, and they would ride horses, and they would be present for the audience to see.
So the Battle of San Juan Hill was actually kind of a finale, all hands on deck performance, and it was, it takes place in Cuba, and it's essentially, the United States defeating Spain. And since it was an all hands on deck performance, that means they needed all the performers, and then somebody had to play the Spanish. Some other performers, other brown performers would have been asked, and then the Filipinos.
But when it came to this task, they drew a line, and they decided, you know what? We are not going to play the role of the oppressors or the colonizers, the former colonizers. We think about this as one of the earliest forms of collective organizing, almost like a labor strike, where they were withholding their labor from these performances as a quiet form of resistance.
The big show of the Rough Rider show na ginamit dun sa mga yung Battle of San Juan Hill, which was a part of the big exhibit, hindi naman story natin yun eh. Kaya nakita mong, you saw the reactions no, sa article ng mga Pilipino, hindi naman kami yan eh, ba't yung pinipilit kami sumali sa ganyan?
One of the most famous multi-purpose indoor arena sa buong mundo, ang Madison Square Garden sa New York City.
The Madison Square Garden show was the premiere show. And as soon as the Filipinos enter the arena, they're basically greeted with hisses and boos. You can think of like one person or two people hissing and booing, but when you think of an arena, Madison Square Garden, maybe at 15,000 people, I don't know if it was upwards of 20,000, but that many people that it was audible that they were the villain and that they were still in the arena.
Following the success of 1899, Buffalo Bill Cody decided to expand the number of Filipino Rough Riders from 3 to 8. So 5 more Filipino Rough Riders were added to the show in that second year.
What's surprising is, given just the sheer volume of scholarship that exists on the Wild West show, how infinitesimal the mention of Filipinos are in it. I mean, Isadora Alcantara we think she's an interesting individual. Part of it is she's the only woman among the troupe. She fell from her horse. There's all these stories that document her. It's probably some severe concussion that she got. So somebody who has a near-death experience on a horse literally gets back on the horse, and at least in the retelling of it, is kind of running her heart out and winning those relay races over and over again.
Yeah, so we might say Lodi, like idol, in contrast to Buffalo Bill Cody, the white male figure at the center stage. We have a Filipino woman who is seeing the world, who is traveling and riding at full speed on this horse. And it's quite an incredible story. It also became important for us to try to trace back her story back to the Philippines, to bring her home, to bring her back to Cavite, to the last known address that we have for her before she came to the United States.
sa patuloy na pagtuklas ni na Emmanuel at Yumi sa buhay ng Filipino Rough Riders. Isang mahalagang impormasyon ang nahanap nila tungkol sa nag-iisang babae sa grupo.
What I love is back in the old days in newspapers is they used to just say, they would write somebody's address down. And so we read this, they introduce Isadora and they say 34 Street Royal.
This is an old map of San Roque, Cavite. Itong kalirial diyan sa suwetang yan ay tinukoy ng aking lolo sa kanyang kasaysayan na sinuot mula sa 13 martyrs na dumaan doon ang 13 martyrs na ililibing. Ito yung aklat ng aking lolo na yung kanyang manuscript sa Spanish na translate na sa English. Dito makikita yung sa barrio San Rafael yung pangalan na Alcantara. At dito na itong pangalan na Alcantara na dito.
Ayun.
Ito
Sa
siya,
San Rafael.
Alcantara.
Opo.
Barrio San Rafael. Pero yung sa sentro ng San Roque, meron din nakalagay na Alcantara. Pamilya Alcantara. Pero wala silang kapaliwanagan. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila well-known or kakilala tao. Kasi kung meron, andito yung nakapaliwanag sa kanila, yung pagpunta nila ng Amerika. Pero siguro baka hindi na sila bumalik dito eh.
This is part of our effort to recenter them and to reimagine them from a Filipino perspective. Our search for Isadora, first here in the Philippines, but then coming to a place like Cavite, is about bringing a particular specificity to the participants' lives.
Ayon sa research, dumating sa Amerika ang unang 3 Filipino Rough Riders sakay ng barkong SS China noong March 18, 1899. Ayon din kina Emmanuel at Yumi, posibleng may snow pa sa Amerika nang dumating ang unang Filipino Rough Riders.
In the same way that Jose Rizal landed in San Francisco and made his way across the continental US, we imagined the 3 Filipino Rough Riders landing in San Francisco and following a similar path.
Ang talong dyan, trabaho lang ba yun? Did they want to stay there? Yan lang siguro kulang pa dyan sa kasaysayan eh. Bakit sila pumunta? At bakit sila sumama? Ang isang nakikita kong hinala doon ay nagsimula ang recruitment nila bago pumutok ang Philippine-American War.
Ang pagtuklas sa Filipino Rough Riders, tinawag na We Are Coming Project ni na Emmanuel at Yumi. Bahagi nito ang iba't ibang activities para buhayin ang kasaysayan ng Filipino Rough Riders sa Wild West Show. Bukod sa pagdidisplay ng mga pangalan ng Filipino Rough Riders, nakipag-collaborate din sila sa ilang Filipino artists para lumikha ng signages.
So we worked with sign painters to make a sign for each of the stops. And so when you see the various signs, you'll see the movement of the Filipino troop across vast parts of the United States at a moment when there were not many Filipinos traveling.
Dahil sa We Are Coming Project, nalaman ng Filipina-American na si Sheila DeForest ang kwento ng Filipino Rough Riders.
So, first time ko nakarating sa Buffalo Bill Museum in 2010 nung nagbisita ako dito sa Golden, Colorado. Pero wala akong alam na mayroong palang Filipino Rough Riders during the show. But through this project, I was able to learn that Filipinos have been in the entertainment industry that early in the United States. Personally, as a Filipino American, it makes myself proud to be part of the diaspora and the community, and this will help inspire our creatives and artists in the modern Filipino American community.
Yes, it's a forgotten piece of history, and we're trying to, I guess, rectify that, uncover that, understand it, also understand why it was forgotten. So this is one of the first group images that we encountered of the Filipino performers from 1900. So this is an image in Madison Square Gardens. These are the 8 performers themselves. You can see they've been put in what's perceived as sort of somewhat traditional Filipino clothes, but modified for riding. That photograph has always been interesting to us.
This other image that we uncovered tells another story. They're looking directly at the camera. There's an affection between them. They have their hands on each other's legs or their knees. And they feel close to one another, like a close group of friends, like a barkada. In contrast to the negative representations in the paper, this group of performers, they were displaying themselves as alive, as organized, as a collective. They were carrying the Philippine flag, which was unheard of at the time. This is still in the midst of the Philippine-American War. And to carry that flag was an act of rebellion, an act of displaying this revolutionary spirit.
Importante makita rin ito. Kasi maliliit na kwento ito. Bagamat maliliit na kwentong ito, makikita rin natin dito kung paano nagkakaroon ng pagkikilala sa atin ng ibang bayan.
I think one, it's important because it's telling a story that hasn't been told, especially in that part of that period of time, how Filipinos were being presented in sort of exhibitions, like World's Fairs.
And so in some ways, this is fulfilling their wish to be remembered, both as a group, but also individually, and they're not lost to history.